What exactly is an Incoterm? And what do things like FOB and CIF and EXW really mean? In this video, I'm going to dumb it down as much as possible to explain to you what these complicated terms mean in plain English. So Incoterms are some super exclusive language that the shipping industry likes to use to confuse us common lay people like you and me. But here's what they really mean. Let's say that you bought yourself 100 mirrors from a supplier on AliExpress, and now you need to have them shipped to your doorstep in Seattle, Washington. Let's also say that the person or the factory that you bought them from is in Shanghai, China. There are a lot of steps that are going to go into having these mirrors shipped from Shanghai to Seattle. Most people think that when you ship a box from China to Seattle, really all you need to pay for is either the airplane or the ship to have your goods shipped. The truth is that there's a lot of other costs that go into it. You see, when we have something shipped via UPS or FedEx, UPS and FedEx do this nice job of giving us all one-in rate. But with international sea and air freight companies, they break it down into a million different fees, and Incoterms decide who's going to pay those various fees. Have you ever bought a car before? Well, Incoterms and shipping is a lot like buying a car. Yes, when you buy a car, the cost of the car is the most expensive part of the purchase. But you're probably going to get a lot of confusing other fees as well. Things like registration fees and documentation fees, etc., etc. These fees are all pretty small, but you have no idea what any of them are. All you know is that you have to pay them. Now, when you buy a car, it's you who's going to pay those fees. But when you're buying from a factory in a place like China, Incoterms are going to decide if you or your supplier pay those different fees. I should also point out at this point, a lot of people get really stressed out about, oh my gosh, how do I pay for all these different fees? Do I have to actually go and find an insurance broker and go to the port and pay for some port fees? No, the freight forwarder in most cases will give you one all-in cost, but how much of that you're going to pay and how much of it your supplier is going to pay is going to be decided upon those Incoterms. So what are these fees? Let's start from the beginning and go to the end. Well, the factory has to ship your mirrors from their factory to the port that they're being shipped. Whether it's an airport or a seaport, somebody has to pay to ship those to that port. And guess what? Once they get received by that port, no matter again whether it's an airport or a seaport, wants some money. Oh, and guess what? The government's going to want some money as well. And they're going to take a fee, normally in the way of different export duties and fees. Perfect. You've settled up all of those fees and your goods are ready to ship from China to Seattle. But of course, now we come to the biggest fee, the cost of that boat or that plane to ship them from China into America. All right, you pay all those fees and the airplane or the boat arrives into Seattle. Well, guess what? Now that port, again, whether it's an airport or a seaport, wants some money for handling that cargo. Now guess what? The Chinese government wanted some money when those mirrors were exported from China, and now America wants some money when those mirrors are imported in the way of tariffs. All right, great. You pay all of those fees and now your mirrors are ready to pick up. Well, guess what? They won't fit in your Honda Accord, and you need to pay a trucking company to pick them up from the port and deliver them to your address in Seattle. Of course, they're going to want some money too. Thankfully, that's the last of the fees. And Incoterms are just deciding who's going to pay for each of those fees. There's about 6 different categories of fees which decide how many of those fees you're going to pay and how many your supplier are going to pay. They range from your supplier will pay for everything, and that would be called DDP, Delivery Duty Paid, which simply means delivery and duties are paid by your supplier, all the way up to your factory pays for nothing, and that's called EXW, which basically means your factory will get those mirrors ready at their factory, but from the point of pickup to the point of delivery, you pay for absolutely everything else. And then in the middle, and this is the most common one that you'll probably experience and maybe that you've also heard about, is FOB. And FOB basically means that your supplier will pay to get the goods delivered to the port, but after the port, it's all up to you. The truth is, all of these Incoterms sound very confusing, but you can just ask your supplier to quote you any of the Incoterms that you want. So if you just want it delivered right to your doorstep and your supplier deals with everything, just ask them to give you a DDP price. Your supplier is of course going to bill you for that, but it removes all the headache and stress of you having to worry about arranging that. yourself. There you have it, Incoterms. Basically, they just decide who's paying for what when you ship some goods.